I'm 18F, a freshman at State University about 3 hours away from home. I've been living in the dorm since August, and everything was going really well. Good grades, made some friends, joined a couple clubs. Sure, I was homesick at first, but I was adjusting and actually starting to love the independence. I called home every few days, texted with my mom regularly, and everything seemed normal. My dad, 52M, and I have always had a complicated relationship. He's very much a my house, my rules type of guy, and he never really adjusted well to me growing up. When I was applying for colleges, he kept pushing me to stay local and commute from home, but I wanted the full college experience. My mom, 49F, supported my decision, and after a lot of arguments, he finally agreed to help pay for dorms under the condition that I prove I could handle the responsibility. I thought I was doing exactly that. I was managing my coursework, doing my own laundry, budgeting my meal plan, and staying out of trouble. I even got a part-time job at the campus bookstore to help with personal expenses. I was proud of how well I was adapting to college life. So you can imagine my shock when I came home for Thanksgiving break yesterday. I walked into the house, excited to see my family and sleep in my own bed for a few days. But when I got upstairs and opened the door to my room, I literally stopped breathing. The room was completely empty except for basic furniture, just the bed frame with a bare mattress, the desk, and the dresser. All of my posters were gone. My bookshelf was empty. The fairy lights I'd strung around the ceiling were gone. My collection of snow globes from family trips gone. The photo collages I'd made with friends from high school gone. Even my old stuffed animals that I'd had since I was little were nowhere to be seen. I stood there for probably 5 minutes just staring, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't my room anymore. It looked like a guest room at a hotel. I ran downstairs and found my dad watching TV in the living room. The conversation went something like this. Me. Dad, what happened to my room? Where are all my things? Him. Not even looking up from the TV. I packed them up. They're in boxes in the basement. Me. You packed up my room? Without telling me? Why would you do that? Him. You don't live here anymore. You made that choice when you decided you were too good to commute to college. I needed the space. Me. Needed the space for what? And what do you mean I don't live here? This is still my home. Him. No. The dorm is your home now. You wanted independence so badly, well, now you have it. I'm converting your room into a proper office. I completely lost it. I started crying and yelling, asking how he could make such a huge decision without even talking to me about it. He just kept saying that I made my choice and that I should have thought about the consequences before I decided to move out. My mom came home from work in the middle of this argument, and when she saw what had happened, she was just as shocked as I was. Apparently, he did this while she was at work during the day and never mentioned it to her either. She started yelling at him too, asking how he could do something like this without discussing it with anyone. The worst part was what he said next. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. She wanted to be an adult and live on her own, so she can figure out what to do with her stuff. I'm not running a storage unit for someone who doesn't live here. Asked if I could at least get some of my things back for the weekend, and he said the boxes were somewhere in the basement and that I could dig around if I wanted to. When I went down there, I found about 15 unlabeled cardboard boxes stacked in a corner. I spent 2 hours going through them, and everything was just thrown in randomly. My books were mixed with old clothes, my jewelry was loose at the bottom of a box with random school papers, and I found one of my favorite framed photos cracked because it wasn't wrapped properly. It was clear he had just swept everything off surfaces and shoved it all into boxes without any care. Some of my things might actually be missing entirely. I haven't been able to find my journal or a few sentimental items that my grandmother gave me before she passed last year. I'm devastated. I kept crying on and off all night, and I barely slept on that bare mattress in what used to be my room. This morning, my dad acted like nothing happened. He was making coffee and reading the news like it was a normal day. When I tried to bring it up again, he just said, "We already talked about this yesterday," and walked away. My mom is furious with him and has been apologizing to me nonstop, but she also keeps trying to make excuses for him like he's having a hard time with you growing up and you know how he gets when he feels like he's losing control. She says she's going to talk to him about setting the room back up, but honestly, I don't even want that anymore. The trust is completely broken. The thing is, I never intended to abandon my family or cut ties with home. I was planning to spend summers here, come home for breaks, maybe even move back for a while after graduation while I looked for jobs. I always thought of this as my home base, the place I could always come back to. Now I feel like I don't have that safety net anymore. But here's where it gets even worse. Last night, I was talking to my mom privately, and she told me something that made my blood run cold. Apparently, this isn't the first time my dad has done something like this. When my older brother, 24M, moved out for college 6 years ago, my dad gradually took over his room too, but he did it slowly over the course of months. My brother never really said anything about it because he was busy with school and then got an apartment with friends after freshman year. My mom said she thought my dad had learned his lesson and wouldn't do the same thing to me, which is why she never warned me. This makes me think this was all premeditated. Like he was just waiting for me to leave so he could claim the space. The fact that he did it so quickly and so thoroughly makes it feel almost vindictive. I also found out from my mom that he's been complaining about paying for my dorm costs, even though they had agreed on it months ago. He apparently keeps saying things like, if she wants to play house at college, she can pay for it herself, and we're wasting money on a dorm when there's a perfectly good room here she could use. My mom works full-time as a nurse and contributes to household finances, but my dad controls most of the money decisions. She's afraid that he might try to stop paying for my dorm next semester, which would basically force me to either commute from home, where I apparently no longer have a room, or figure out how to pay for housing myself on a bookstore salary. I called my brother this morning to tell him what happened, and his response was basically, "Yeah, that sounds like Dad." I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised. He told me that our dad had made similar comments to him about choosing college over family, and that he just learned to expect that kind of behavior. He said the best thing he ever did was become financially independent as quickly as possible, so he didn't have to deal with Dad's power games. The more I think about it, the more I realize this is part of a pattern. My dad has always had issues with control and has always taken things personally when they're not about him. When I was in high school and started dating, he would make comments about how I was choosing boys over family time. When I got my driver's license, he made it as difficult as possible for me to use the car, saying I needed to earn the privilege every single time, even for things like going to school events or meeting friends at the library. I remember when I was applying for colleges, he would make these passive-aggressive comments about how I was so eager to get away from home and how I must really hate it here if I was trying so hard to leave. At the time, I thought he was just being protective or having trouble with me growing up, but now I'm wondering if he was always planning to make me pay for choosing independence. The thing that really gets me is that I've been a good kid. I've never been in trouble. I get good grades, I'm responsible with money, and I've always been respectful to my parents. I chose a college that's close enough to visit regularly, and I've made an effort to stay connected with my family. I don't understand why he's treating me like I've betrayed him somehow. Right now, I'm supposed to stay home until Sunday, but I honestly don't want to be here anymore. The house doesn't feel like home anymore, and I feel unwelcome. I'm thinking about going back to campus early, but my dorm doesn't officially reopen until Sunday evening, and I don't know where I would stay. I'm also really worried about what this means for my future. If my dad stops paying for my dorm, I don't know what I'll do. I can't afford it on my own, and I clearly can't count on having a room at home. I've been looking into financial aid options, but most of the deadlines for additional aid have already passed for this year. My mom keeps saying she'll work something out and that she won't let him cut off my housing, but she's said things like that before and then been unable to follow through when my dad puts his foot down. She means well, but she's never been able to stand up to him effectively. I feel like my whole world has been turned upside down in the span of 24 hours. Yesterday, I was a college student excited to come home for Thanksgiving. Today, I feel like I don't have a family home to come back to. The worst part is the feeling of betrayal. If he had talked to me about needing the space, or if he had told me he was struggling with the cost of housing, we could have worked something out together. But he did this behind my back and then acted like it was my fault for choosing to go away to college. It feels like he was punishing me for growing up and becoming independent, which is literally what parents are supposed to want for their kids. I've been crying on and off all day, and I feel so lost. I don't know if I should try to repair this relationship, or if I should just accept that this is who my dad is and start planning for a future where I can't rely on my family for support. Part of me wants to fight back, to demand that he restore my room and apologize for doing this without talking to me. But another part of me is wondering if he's actually done me a favor by showing his true colors now, before I made any major life decisions based on the assumption that I had a family safety net. I keep thinking about all the times he's made comments about me choosing other things over family, and I'm starting to wonder if this is just his way of making sure that choice becomes permanent. Like, if he makes it impossible for me to come home, then he can say I abandoned the family instead of admitting that he pushed me away. Right now, I'm sitting in what used to be my room, typing this on my laptop, and it feels surreal. There's literally nothing here that shows I ever lived in this house. No photos, no decorations, no personal items. It's like my childhood has been erased. I found most of my clothes in the boxes, so I repacked a suitcase for the rest of the weekend. But I'm leaving behind boxes of things that I can't take back to my tiny dorm room. Books, photo albums, keepsakes, and random stuff that doesn't have immediate use but has sentimental value. I don't know when I'll see any of it again, or if it will still be there the next time I come home. My mom has been trying to convince me to stay for the whole weekend, saying that she'll talk to my dad and work things out. But honestly, I don't want to spend the next few days walking on eggshells and pretending everything is fine. And I definitely don't want to sit through Thanksgiving dinner acting grateful while my dad pretends he didn't just blow up my sense of security and belonging. I think what hurts most is that this didn't have to happen this way. If he had just communicated with me, we could have figured something out together. Maybe I could have taken more of my stuff with me when I left for school, or we could have worked out a plan for gradually transitioning the room. But instead, he made a unilateral decision that affects my entire sense of home and belonging, and he did it in the most hurtful way possible. I'm also angry at myself for not seeing this coming. Looking back, there were probably signs. The way he talked about college costs, the comments about me choosing to leave, the fact that he's done this to my brother before. Maybe I should have prepared better, or at least had a conversation about expectations before I left for school. But I was 18 and excited about starting college. I trusted that my family home would still be my family home when I came back. I thought that going to college was a normal part of growing up, not something that would get me kicked out of the family. Now I'm second-guessing everything. Should I transfer to a cheaper school closer to home? Should I take out more loans to ensure I can pay for my own housing? Should I just accept that this is how things are now and start building a completely independent life? The thing is, I don't want to be completely cut off from my family. I love my mom, and I have a good relationship with my brother. But I also can't keep living in fear of my dad's next power move. If he can pack up my room without warning, what else might he do? Will he refuse to let me come home for Christmas? Will he stop paying for school entirely if I do something else he doesn't approve of? I feel like I'm being forced to choose between having a relationship with my family and having any sense of security or control over my own life. And that's not a choice an 18-year-old should have to make. Right now, I'm leaning toward going back to school early and starting to build a life that doesn't depend on my dad's approval or financial support. It's scary as hell, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to make it work, but at least I won't be constantly wondering when the rug is going to get pulled out from under me again. I've been thinking about what my brother said about becoming financially independent as quickly as possible. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe I need to accept that I can't count on my family for support and start making decisions based on that reality.
But it shouldn't have to be this way.
I should be able to go to college and still have a relationship with my family. I should be able to grow up and become independent without it being treated like a betrayal. I should be able to trust that my family home will still be there when I need it. Instead, I'm 18 years old, and I feel like I'm suddenly on my own in a way I never expected or prepared for. And the worst part is that it didn't have to be like this. This whole situation could have been avoided with just a simple conversation. I don't know what I'm looking for by posting this. Maybe just validation that this isn't normal, or advice on how to handle the practical aspects of suddenly not having a family safety net. Or maybe I just needed to get it all out somewhere because I feel like I'm going to explode if I keep it all inside. If anyone has been through something similar, I'd love to hear how you handled it. And if anyone has advice on how to quickly become financially independent as a college student, I'm all ears. Because right now, it feels like that's my only option for maintaining any sense of security and control over my own life. Update. Posted 3 hours later. I wasn't expecting this post to blow up the way it did, but thank you to everyone who has commented with support and advice. It means more than you know to hear from people who understand what this feels like. A few people have asked about my mom's response and whether she's really going to stand up to my dad this time. Honestly, I'm not holding my breath. She's been married to him for 25 years, and in all that time, I've never seen her successfully change his mind when he's made a decision like this. She'll try, and she'll feel bad when it doesn't work, but ultimately, she won't push hard enough to actually make a difference. I think she stays with him because she's gotten used to his controlling behavior, and it's easier to make excuses for him than to confront the reality of who he really is. She keeps saying things like, "He loves you. He just doesn't know how to show it, and he's afraid of losing you." But love doesn't look like packing up someone's room behind their back and refusing to talk about it. Several people have suggested family therapy, but my dad would never agree to it. In his mind, he's not the problem. I'm the problem for choosing college over family, and my mom is the problem for enabling me. He doesn't think he needs to change anything about his behavior. Someone asked if I could stay with friends over breaks, and that's actually a possibility I hadn't fully considered. My roommate has already invited me to spend winter break with her family if I need to, and I have a few friends from high school whose parents might let me crash for a few days here and there. It's not ideal, but it's better than staying somewhere I feel unwelcome. The financial independence question is obviously the big one. Based on the advice I've gotten here, I'm going to talk to my financial aid office when I get back to campus about my options. I'm also going to look into getting a second part-time job and maybe picking up some tutoring work. It's going to be hard to balance with my coursework, but I think I'd rather be stressed about money than constantly worried about my dad's next move. A lot of people have said that this is actually a blessing in disguise because it's showing me who my dad really is before I made any major life decisions based on family support. I think there's truth to that, even though it doesn't make it hurt any less right now. I've decided I'm going back to campus tomorrow instead of staying for Thanksgiving. My mom is disappointed, but she understands. My dad hasn't said anything about it one way or the other, which honestly just confirms that he doesn't really care whether I'm here or not. The hardest part is accepting that the family dynamic I thought we had was apparently not real. I thought my dad was proud of me for getting into college and doing well. I thought he saw my independence as a sign that he and my mom had raised me well. Instead, it turns out he sees it as rejection and betrayal, and he's willing to punish me for it. But you know what? If this is his way of forcing me to choose between family and independence, then I choose independence. I'd rather build a life on my own terms than spend the next 4 years walking on eggshells and wondering what he's going to take away from me next. It's terrifying, but it's also kind of liberating. For the first time in my life, I don't have to worry about whether my dad approves of my choices. I can make decisions based on what's best for me, not what will keep him happy. I'm still hurt and angry, and I'm sure I will be for a while. But I'm also determined to prove that I can handle whatever comes next. He wanted me to learn that actions have consequences. Fine. The consequence of his action is that he's lost his daughter's trust and respect. The consequence of my action, choosing college and independence, is that I get to build the life I want without his interference. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but for now, I'm focusing on getting back to school and moving forward. Thank you again to everyone who took the time to comment. You've helped me realize that I'm not crazy for feeling hurt by this, and that I don't have to accept this treatment just because we're family. Update 2. Posted 2 days later. I made it back to campus early, and I'm feeling a lot better being in my own space again. My RA was really understanding about letting me back into the dorm a few days early, especially after I explained the situation. I had a long phone call with my brother yesterday, and it was really helpful. He told me more about his experience with our dad, and it's basically the same pattern. Dad makes everything about control and takes any sign of independence as a personal attack. My brother said the best decision he ever made was to stop trying to maintain a relationship on our dad's terms and just build his own life. He also offered to help me financially if I get completely cut off, which was incredibly generous. He can't cover tuition or anything major, but he said he could help with groceries or other small expenses if needed. It's nice to know I have at least one family member in my corner. I've scheduled a meeting with financial aid for next week to discuss my options. I'm also going to talk to my academic advisor about the possibility of getting a paid research position or work-study job that might offer better hours and pay than my current bookstore job. The weirdest thing is how much lighter I feel now that I've accepted the reality of the situation. I spent so much energy over the years trying to manage my dad's moods and reactions, and it's almost a relief to just stop doing that. I can make decisions based on what's best for me instead of what will keep him happy. My mom has texted me a few times asking when I'm coming home for Christmas, but I haven't responded yet. I'm not sure I want to put myself through that again, especially if nothing has changed. I might visit for a day just to see her and grab more of my stuff, but I don't think I can handle staying in that house for an extended period anymore. Several people asked about legal issues around my belongings, and honestly, that's not a battle I want to fight. Most of the really important stuff is just sentimental, and I'm learning that I can build new memories and collect new things that are entirely mine. It's hard to let go of some of the childhood keepsakes, but holding on to them isn't worth the emotional cost of fighting with my dad. I'm also realizing that this whole situation has taught me a lot about what I want my own family to look like someday. I never want my kids to feel like their home is conditional on their obedience or that growing up is a betrayal. I want to be the kind of parent who celebrates their children's independence instead of punishing them for it. For now, I'm just taking things one day at a time. I'm doing well in my classes, I'm making good friends, and I'm learning to trust my own judgment instead of constantly second-guessing myself. It's not the college experience I planned, but in some ways, it's teaching me more about who I want to be than any classroom could. Thanks again to everyone who has offered support and advice. This community has been incredibly helpful during one of the hardest weeks of my life, and I'm grateful for all the perspectives and encouragement you've shared. I'll probably post one more update after I meet with financial aid and figure out my plan for the spring semester. But for now, I'm cautiously optimistic that I'm going to be okay. It's going to be hard, but I'm stronger than I thought I was, and I'm determined to build a life that no one can take away from me. Final update, posted 1 week later. I met with financial aid and my academic advisor, and I have a plan. It's not going to be easy, but it's doable. I qualified for some additional need-based aid after explaining my situation, and I'm going to take out a small student loan to cover the gap. I also got approved for a work-study position in the tutoring center that pays better than my bookstore job and will look good on my resume. Between all of that, I should be able to cover my housing and meal plan for the spring semester without relying on my dad. My academic advisor also connected me with a program that helps first-generation and financially struggling students navigate college. They offer mentorship, emergency funding for unexpected expenses, and workshops on things like building credit and financial planning. I never thought I'd need something like that, but I'm grateful it exists. The best news is that my brother offered to let me stay with him over summer break so I can work and save money. He lives about an hour from campus in a city with lots of job opportunities, so it's actually perfect. I won't have to go home at all if I don't want to. My mom called yesterday and told me that my dad set up his office in my old room and seems very happy with his new space. She sounded like she wanted me to be happy for him, which was honestly kind of surreal. She also mentioned that he's been talking about how proud he is that I'm learning to be independent, as if this was all part of some master plan to help me grow up instead of a petty power move. I'm not sure if he actually believes his own revisionist history, or if he's just trying to save face, but either way, I'm done trying to understand his motivations. What matters is that I now know exactly where I stand, and I can plan accordingly. I did end up going home for one day to get more of my things. It was awkward, but I managed to fill 2 more suitcases with clothes and books that I actually need. I also grabbed a few specific sentimental items that I couldn't bear to leave behind. Some jewelry from my grandmother, my high school yearbooks, and a photo album my mom made for my 16th birthday. My dad was in his new office when I was packing and made a comment about how I was finally learning to prioritize what's actually important. I just ignored him. I've realized that engaging with his twisted logic only makes things worse, and I don't owe him any kind of response or explanation for my choices. The strangest thing is how normal everything feels now that I've accepted the situation. I'm not constantly anxious about what my dad might do next because I've already planned for the worst-case scenario. I'm not trying to maintain a relationship that requires me to make myself smaller or less independent. I'm just living my life on my own terms. I'm sure there will be challenges ahead, and I'm sure I'll have moments where I miss the security of thinking I had a family safety net. But I'm also excited about the freedom to make choices based on what I want instead of what will keep the peace at home. My friends have been incredibly supportive, and I'm building chosen family connections that feel more stable and nurturing than my biological family ever did. My roommate's parents sent me a care package for finals week with a note saying they were proud of how I was handling everything, which honestly made me cry happy tears for the first time in weeks. I think the biggest thing I've learned from this whole experience is that home isn't a place, it's a feeling of safety, acceptance, and belonging. My childhood house stopped feeling like home the moment I realized that my place there was conditional. But my dorm room, surrounded by people who support my growth and independence, feels more like home than anywhere else ever has. To anyone else dealing with controlling or manipulative family members, I want you to know that you're not crazy for wanting independence, and you don't have to accept treatment that makes you feel small or unsafe just because it's coming from family. It's scary to step away from that dynamic, but it's also incredibly freeing once you realize you can build a life that doesn't depend on other people's approval. I'm not sure if I'll ever have a normal relationship with my dad, and I'm still figuring out how to maintain a connection with my mom without getting pulled back into the dysfunction. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living authentically instead of trying to manage other people's emotions. College was supposed to be about learning and growing and figuring out who I want to be. I didn't expect it to also be about learning to set boundaries with family and build financial independence, but maybe those are the most important lessons of all. Thanks to everyone who has followed this saga and offered support along the way. You've helped me realize that I'm not alone, and that there are people out there who understand what it's like to have to choose between family peace and personal growth. I chose growth, and I'm finally at peace with that decision. I'm looking forward to spring semester, to my new job, and to continuing to build a life that reflects my values instead of other people's expectations. It's going to be an adventure, but it's my adventure, and that makes all the difference.